Susan runs a lot of very interesting analogies. I like them very much. And to start off with, what she says is that the inner voices, which some of us remember, the old joke about if you talk to yourself crazy, and then the next joke is, no, not unless you answer, or not unless you disagree, and etc., etc., etc. But the truth is that everybody talks to themselves, and everyone has a variety of voices going on in them. The place of mental illness is where you don't realize that these are different voices within you, where you believe you're being spoken to by other people, where you have lost a sense of reality. But I've never known anyone who doesn't have different aspects of their personality, their history, their values, their interests, speaking to them, and it's like a cacophonous sea of voices sometimes. And so Susan analogizes it to having a cast of characters inside you. Now, if this isn't your experience, I have a couple examples that might fit. If you've learned to drive, back in the days when you learned to drive, or if you have ever learned to operate something where it was very, very crucial that you did specific things in a specific sequence, so that you had an instructor sitting right next to you and constantly commenting as you performed the task. So getting a driver's license, or piloting a plane, or doing anything where the instructor could not simply let you go and leave you alone and check in a day or an hour or watch you go, where they needed to put input in on a constant, continual basis. At the same time, they were giving you tips and techniques and other things to help you feel more comfortable with the process. That this would be an example of a real-life outer voice. And as you start to do this activity on your own, you start to internalize that voice, and perhaps with other voices, but specifically an instructor's voice, especially if the instructor was fair and helpful, tends to be a voice that we are willing to internalize very easily and willingly. So that you might hear your instructor as you're driving along say something about left-hand turns or U-turns or going too fast or something like that. And then at a later time, the voice becomes your voice. And that's when you have fully integrated the external voice and the external information. And you've converted it into your style of driving, what you care about, what you value, how polite you wish to be, how within the law you wish to be. And so your own voice will take over at that point, saying, whoops, or watch out, or remember to do the left, take the left turn. That's just one example of an internal voice. Now, another example of internal voices are the voices of our parents. But there's a distinction here, and that is that our parents' voices, when we heard those voices, we were not as well developed as we may have been at 16 or 20 or 25 when we engaged in adult activities with an instructor. So when we originally heard our parents' voices, they were the voice of God. They were the ultimate authority. They controlled everything in our life. They gave and held back love. They provided food, shelter, and clothing. These were very important voices. So when we heard those voices and began to internalize them and bring them in, we didn't have a strong ego at that time. And we were in an immature and juvenile state, so that the voices may have come in ways that we were not making an evaluation about the voice. So it's a different kind of voice because it came in when we were younger and less conscious of what might be behind the voice. So this is the kind of voice where you pick up from your father or your mother, and there are positive voices, of course. We don't focus on the positive voices here because they don't need any healing. We focus on the voices that have created a problem. A place where a parent's voice might say, "You're always careless." And it may have been repeated so many times that we have internalized that voice so that we take on the role of parent with the best of intentions to keep ourselves out of danger, to keep ourselves socially acceptable, to not break things. And we hear that voice, but we will probably hear the voice with some of the tones of the original parental voice. So parents not being perfect, if they were short-tempered or curt and said, "You're always careless," we might still have a remnant of that voice inside us, where we hear the finger wagging saying, "You're always careless." So this would be another in cast of characters. These are the kinds of voices that we're talking about. And when we're working with voices and parts of our personality, we're always focused on the less mature voices, the ones that need support and help, and any voice that is negative or not constructive. So we're looking at a leftover voice that was never meant to hang around for 20, 30, 40 years, that still wags its finger and chides us and makes us feel bad. These are the kinds of voices that we're actually looking for, and you will find others as you explore the internal cast of characters in your own mind. Another way of looking at this is that there are different energies inside us. And we may hear the energy in terms of phrasing, and that's another way to look at the voices. So if we have an energy of play and fun, we might describe that as the child's voice, the child's point of view, the child's perspective. And another analogy she makes here is that we don't realize that these voices are like frequencies on a radio dial, and we move around and through them. And we may be listening to the child's voice when there are other voices as well in the background. And so part of developing the observer self is to come up above the fray of this cast of characters and keep an eye out for what is important, what is the priority in a given moment. And the way she analogizes that is the observer self takes the position of being part of the audience so that it can offer you feedback. In terms of feedback, I was trying to think of all the different ways I could express this. And while I was doing it, I got up in the night and I went to type on the computer, but I didn't turn on the light. And as I watched the screen, I realized I was typing complete garbage. And so I had to turn on the light because I'm not a touch typist. And it struck me as odd that with just a small nightlight on, I could type quite accurately. But without any light at all, I was just that uncertain of where my fingers were, so that if I got out of alignment, I'd be typing blah, blah, blah into the computer. And so I'm bringing that up now because feedback, you don't have to have 100% feedback for it to be useful. Just having a small amount of feedback is enough to keep you on track. So in the perhaps silly analogy of typing without any light and not really knowing where your fingers are, and typing with just a very soft light so that you can get a better sense out of the peripheral vision of where your hands are on the keyboard, you might only make 1 or 2 mistakes working like that. But that's all feedback really needs to be. It is not meant to be a ball and chain around you, stopping you from progressing. Good feedback, well given and timely, can allow you to move quickly and easily with grace in the activity that you're in. It's as if there's somebody watching out for you.